Hey everybody, Dennis Stanley here with Lindsey Jones. Guess what? We now have the 2027 Respiratory Therapy Examination Matrix. I have it here in my hot little hand, and perhaps you've already seen it as well. This has just come out. And over the next videos, we are going to talk about that. There's lots of questions that could be answered and asked, and so we'll try to answer as many of those as we can. Certainly, one of the things that you're going to be concerned about as an instructor, as a program director, is that what is on there in terms of content that's new and different, because, well, you're going to have to change some of your curriculum to make sure you're covering all of that. That's not what we're going to cover today. We are doing a deep dive. Naturally, we'll try to identify those things that are new. So far, just to give you an idea, we are seeing things that are fairly new to the examination, but not a ton of things. We don't anticipate this is going to be a whole new field. It's just going to be a few little items that they're going to present that's new. And we also think that they may shift a little bit and concentrate a little bit more heavily on some of the items. But we will be talking about that in future videos. Today, I want to talk about just some of the terminology and some of the overview concepts of the examination. Now, there are some terms out there that you're going to hear. They're going to become buzzwords everywhere, and everybody's going to wonder, what do they mean? So there's the term mini pool. They're going to talk about questions as mini pools, and they're also going to refer to ISGs, or item sampling groups. They're also going to talk about the idea that they're going to use linear on-the-fly testing. So what does all that mean? And that's what we want to talk about during this video. Now, we don't believe that it's going to materially change the experience for the student very much. They're really just revealing how they're putting the test together. What I think they're really concentrating on is test security. So in the past, the NBRC has had specific forms, we'll call them, that were static arrangements of exam questions. Those things were matrix balanced. They were also statistically balanced, so they represented a good form. Now, how many forms did the NBRC have for the TMC exam? Well, we don't know. They didn't really disclose that. We're guessing they had somewhere between 8 and 10. Could be more, could be fewer, but they had different forms so that if somebody failed an exam, then when they went to take the next one, the system knew that they've already seen one set of questions, didn't want to show them those again, so it showed them a different form. They also did multiple forms so that if people were sharing what they saw in the examination, if they had really good memories and they could talk about questions, I know they're not supposed to do that, but if they did that, then it's possible that one student could remember a lot of what was on one exam, and then if that student had that same form, then they would have a little bit of an advantage, and that wasn't really good for the NBRC. So this new way, this approach for a mini pool or a special ISG pooling of questions is really just a way for them to produce a random examination on the fly. And that means that every student who takes an exam and hits go, puts in their social security and says, "Test me," that could have a very different experience than every other student. Now, there might be some questions that students can see. They might see similar special item groups, but the test will be able to produce something random in that respect, so that every testing experience is rather different for them. So our understanding, and again, we're kind of speculating to a degree, the NBRC, we hope, will talk more about this, particularly at the summer forum. So we're speculating a little bit, but we've been doing this for a long time, so we have a pretty good understanding of where they're going with that. In the way that they would take a full-length examination and balance the matrix, they can take these little mini pools and make sure those mini pools from certain selections of questions are balanced in and of themselves, and then randomly, rather than select questions one by one to create an examination that's random and different for everybody, they can select whole pools of questions, and then from those ISGs they can just select those. How many will be in an ISG? We don't know. We don't know if they'll reveal that either, but let's say there's 10 questions and you have to do 165 questions that count, well then they could just pick about 16 and a half or so questions, or ISGs I should say, groups, and then they will be able to just randomly put together an on-the-fly examination for your students. Now let me come back to this. I don't think that the student is going to need to understand this very much. And I think the NBRC is just helping you to understand how they put the test together. It doesn't necessarily materially change for the student or even for the instructor. What is going to change is that we make sure that they have all of the information from the different perspectives on the matrix. What are the subject areas? Do they know enough about that? So from student to student, I don't think they're going to experience anything very different, but it is going to be such that if a student remembers all the questions they had on the exam and they go to share those, again, they're not supposed to do that. I encourage them not to do that. They can get in trouble for that. But if they were to do that, then it's very unlikely that another student would have that exact same experience. And so again, we think it's coming down to test security and test validity. Now, remember, we are going to have future videos coming soon, probably about every week. We'll see what happens there, but keep track of us so you can listen to those. But we will concentrate on this matrix for several videos. And in the future, we will talk about something that you're definitely more interested in, is what's on this matrix that we have noticed that's going to be different and in excess of what you may already be teaching. There might be new subjects. I don't think there's going to be a lot of new subjects, but more likely there's going to be subjects that delve a little bit deeper. And that's going to be something that you need to look at to change the curriculum of your program so that it includes all of that. And actually, from the Lindsey-Jones perspective, we're going to have to write questions that do that as well. Just want to remind you that at Lindsey-Jones, we'll be on top of things. And here's what we're planning on doing. One of the biggest things that we recognize that you must have a little bit of fear and apprehension about is that when to change over. So Lindsey-Jones is planning tentatively the ability to release the 2027 practice material educational videos somewhere in the middle of 2026. Might be somewhere from summer to the very beginning of fall. And that's going to allow you to look at your group if you're using Lindsey-Jones University and flip a little switch and say, I want all my students to be on 2027 material. But it'll also allow you to keep those who are going to graduate before 2027 on the 2026 material. Now, if you're dealing with two cohorts, remember, Lindsey-Jones has cohort management. So even though you might have one account and you can see all your students in your account, Lindsey-Jones has the capacity to divide those up in cohorts and change the access for each cohort separately. So you can change individual access to test questions, etc., simulations. In this case, for 2027, there aren't simulations, but you can manage it by cohort. Well, that same thing is going to be true for the 2026-2027 transition, is that if you have one cohort that you know is going to be on 2027, they don't graduate till next year sometime, then you can flip a switch just for that cohort and say, you're on the 2027 stuff, but the current group is going to graduate this year is going to be on the 2026 stuff, and so that's going to be important. Just to recap, remember that we are going to put out more videos on the matrix. Just wanted to share with you some of the terminology that you might see going around and what difference it's going to make for you. Not a lot, but we will talk about those things that will make a difference and a lot more nuts and bolts about the exam as we determine it. We know a lot already, just didn't want to cram it into this video. So that's a good place for us to get started. Be sure to keep track of us so that you get the emails. If we're sending you an email reminding you there's a video out, make sure we're a trusted provider of email, so we don't get put in the spam. But we look forward to talking to you in the future. Now, if you're not using Lindsey-Jones University and you're like, what's he talking about? How are we doing it on Lindsey-Jones University? Well, be sure to call us. We'll be happy to give you an online tour, a Zoom tour. We'll be even happy to turn it on for you and your students even for a week or two just to play with it, just so that you can see what we're doing. But if you have any questions, call Laura at Lindsey-Jones and she'll be happy to help you. All right, until next time, we'll see you.